Welcome back to yet another week of Power Rankings. My name is Hunter, and today we're going to get into the Power Rankings after week 6. There's not much changing near the top, there's not much changing near the bottom, but this week was still very entertaining. We had lots of good games and also a lot of blowouts. So, before we get into it, get me to 250. I'm going to keep reminding you guys because I am going to bring one subscriber on to a video and we're going to talk about their favorite team for 15-20 minutes. And let's get right into it. The Carolina Panthers are not so great. They probably need to go back to Bryce Young. Andy Dalton did not get it done. They lost pretty heavily to the Atlanta Falcons, a division rival. They fall to 1-5 on the year. And as I said, Andy Dalton didn't play well. Defense gives it near 40 points to this Falcons offense, and just not looking good here at the beginning of the season. I had them low, and they rose because of that win, but they're officially back down to the bottom. They're at 32. The New England Patriots were at 32 last week, but I'm going to move them up a bit to 31 because I was actually really impressed with how Drake May played. They did lose to the Texans, but May had a couple of impressive throws, which makes it seem like he's the guy that this Patriots team should have went with across the first couple games of the season, but now it's already almost lost. They are 1-5 at this point, and yeah, lots to turn around for the Patriots. This defense continues to give up lots of points. So this Patriots team is going to have to make a couple of changes, and May looking good, but they are at 31. The Tennessee Titans are at 30 this week, and they come off their bye week and lose 20-17 to the Indianapolis Colts. Will Levis continues to not look good. This team should go out and draft a quarterback in this upcoming draft and just alter between Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. And the defense, they played a better game. The Tennessee Titans definitely played a better defensive game, but not enough to win, and they're 1-4, season fading. They're at 30. Among quarterbacks who have started all 6 games, Deshaun Watson has thrown for the least amount of yards, and he's also been sacked the most. So that kind of shows their O-line's not playing well, but he is not playing well at all. This Cleveland team is not going to admit that they need to make a quarterback change because of the money they did invest into this guy. But in the offseason, this is something Cleveland's definitely going to need to invest. They're 1-5, season looking over. They just traded Amari Cooper to the Buffalo Bills, so they've lost their number one target. And now Cleveland, they had a good year last year, but they're back in the rebuild mode already. They're at 29. They'll drop the game in London pretty heavily to the Chicago Bears. This defense did not play a good game at all. They kind of let that Bears offense walk all over them the entire game. The wide receivers had many drops. I remember Gabe Davis had, I think, 3 drops in this one. And also big drops from Zay Jones and Brian Thomas at one point. But the Jaguars could not capitalize on those drives, and that's why instead of this being a shootout, it turned into a blowout. And the Jaguars are 1-5. They have a second straight game in London this week against the Patriots, an opportunity for them to turn around. But if they lose, there's a chance that Doug Peterson doesn't come back to the United States as the Jaguars head coach. So for right now, they're at number 28. The Adams saga is finally over. Today they shipped him to the Jets. And now it's time to focus on football in Vegas. They are 2-4, and they just need more consistency. It seems like the quarterback problem is something that's going to plague them for the entire season. And it's their fault for not really getting a good quarterback. They thought Minshew could do it, but they've already gone to O'Connell. They got destroyed this week versus the Steelers, where the offense never got going, and the defense, once again, lets up a big performance to a quarterback that didn't play that great. So, yep, the Raiders, 27. Rams on their bye week this week, so I kept them around the same. They go up to 26, actually, because of some losses around them. But the Rams are interesting because this team is going to be healthier once they come back from this bye week, and once they get Kupp and Nakua back, this could be a completely different team. But they are 1-4 right now, not looking great, so that's why I've kept them this low at 26. The Giants' defense played stellar against a Bengals offense that looked great the first 5 weeks of the year. But when their defense plays well, offense goes completely silent. Jones was missing a ton of throws in this one. Tyrone Tracy, though, great game from him. I love what I saw from Tyrone Tracy. He seems like he's a legit running back one for that Giants team. And when Singletary comes back, it's going to be interesting. But defensively, Dexter Lawrence is by far the best defensive tackle in the league because most of the guys that you see leading the sack leaderboards every season are defensive ends. And Lawrence is doing this from the defensive tackle position. So that's really impressive. I'm liking the Giants' defense, but not their offense. So they're at 25. The Miami Dolphins were on bye this week, but really for the Dolphins, it's just can this team stay at a decent record for when Tua comes back? Because this team has not looked great since Tua went down. And it's going to be important to see what the Dolphins could potentially do once Tua comes back. But they were on bye this past week. They have the Colts this week, which is a team that's in a playoff spot right now. If the Dolphins win, that is a huge win for them. So they're at 24. The Saints were very high a couple weeks ago. They are now on a 4-game losing streak. They played no defense against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They let the Buccaneers score over 50 on them. Spencer Rattler looked okay, but a couple turnovers were not good from him. They were able to pick off Baker 3 times, which is I guess positive, but 51 points is ridiculous to allow. And the Saints team, they have the Broncos upcoming on Thursday. That's a team that offensively is not very good. So it's a chance for the Saints to get off this 4-game losing streak and get back to their winning ways. They're at 23. The Jets are continuing to have a wild season. Last week, they fired Robert Saleh. They demoted Nathaniel Hackett. And this week, Monday is their game. They lose to the Bills in what was a close game where both teams played pretty well, but the Jets have to win that type of game if they want to be a playoff team this season. They're 2-4. They go out and make that move for Davante Adams, which changes the dynamic. He'll make his debut probably this Sunday against Pittsburgh, but the Jets are in need of a turnaround. This team was 2-1 at one point. They've now lost 3 in a row to the Broncos, Vikings, and now the Bills. So the Jets need to turn it around. Rodgers looked okay, but he needs to be more efficient. He needs to be his MVP self. So the Jets are at 22. The Cardinals had no answer for the Green Bay Packers early on Sunday, and that ended up costing them in the end. They lose 34-13 to the Packers at Lambeau. And once again, this Cardinals team, they get a convincing win, and then they just collapse the weeks after. I am interested to see what happens from here because this Cardinals offense that looks pretty good. They lost Marvin Harrison, and now they have a game against the Chargers next week on Monday night where they can get a huge rebound win. But in an NFC West that it's not looking great. They're not truly out of it yet, but defensively they need to work on things, and offensively they just need to be more efficient like they were earlier on in the season. So I have them at 21. The Broncos' 3-game winning streak is over. They lose to the Chargers this week, but they had a chance at coming back a bit late. They fall short. But Broncos, they played a bit more impressive offensively, but defensively they kind of let the Chargers have a great game against them. And that's not going to fly if this Broncos team wants to make the playoffs this season. They're currently tied for the 7th seed in the AFC. Lots to work on, but Broncos being 3-3 at this point is honestly impressive, but I have them at 20. Another team that has gotten into losing ways. This team started 3-0. They are now 3-3 after losing to the Lions, Giants, and now They lose to the 49ers on Thursday night. They just got out offensed by that Niners team. Geno played okay once again, but defensively they couldn't really make a stop that they needed to against the Niners. They were just kind of trailing from early on, which doesn't help. And the Seahawks, I'm starting to think, was that 3-0 start really that impressive because of the teams they played? They played three offenses that weren't great. They played the Broncos, they played the Dolphins, and those teams are not offensively great this season. So, Seahawks got to get back in the win column this week, but right now 3-3. A team has never needed a bye week at the right time like the Dallas Cowboys. Absolutely embarrassed by the Detroit Lions. I moved them down 9 to 18 because they're 3-3, but I would have moved them down a bit more if their record kind of shows the football they're playing right now. 3-3 is not representative of Dallas Cowboys football this year at all. They should have a worse record. The Cowboys can't figure it out offensively. I don't understand what's wrong with the team, but defensively, they just collapsed. They let the Lions walk all over them, and the Lions were playing linemen at receiver and running hook and ladders with linemen. They were just messing around against this Cowboys team, which shows what type of game it really was. So, Cowboys down 9 to 18. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Anthony Richardson coming back, but Joe Flacco has done great for this Colts team when they needed him. He went 2-1 in the 3 games he played, and the Colts are tied for a playoff spot. They're in a decent spot to make the playoffs if they continue to play football that they're playing right now, but they just have to play a bit better. They have the Dolphins coming up, and if their defense shows up like they did against the Titans, they'll be able to shut down an offense that is potentially even worse. So, Colts at 17, they went up 6 this week. The Chargers come off the bye week and beat the Broncos. They're 3-2. And the Chargers are interesting to me because I think since how weak the AFC seems to be this year, that the Chargers have a very good shot to make the playoffs. Offensively, J.K. Dobbins is doing a great job at running back. Justin Herbert is playing good. And defensively, Harbaugh has fixed the defensive problem in LA. And now they're 3-2. They have a game coming up against the Cardinals where they can definitely go to 4-2. And that would be an impressive start for a team that missed the playoffs last season. So I have them at 16. Bengals win 17-7. They get back in the win column. And defensively, their best game of the season. This defense was near the bottom of every single defensive stat, and they only allowed 7 points, which is impressive for that unit. I had a couple of subscribers out to that Bengals-Giants game, and they said it was a great experience because the Bengals came out on top. And the Bengals, Joe Burrow continues to play great, but this was Burrow's worst game, and they won, which is great to see if that's a sign of what's to come for Cincinnati. But right now, I've moved them up to the highest they've been on my power rankings this season at 15. The Chicago Bears get a huge win over the Jaguars in London. They're going into their bye week flying high, 4-2, and in a competitive NFC North, that is a great start. I moved them up 2 from 16 to 14, and the Bears are an interesting team because they, right now, many people would place them 4th in that NFC North, but that might be enough to make the playoffs. Caleb Williams has turned around the concerns of the first 1 or 2 games, and now he looks like a franchise quarterback for them. Defensively, they continue to be one of the best teams in the NFL at taking away the football, and lots to look up at in Chicago. They're at 14. Pittsburgh 1-3, dropped 2, but they won't be like other teams from going from 3-0 to 3-3. They win convincingly over the Raiders. Justin Fields looked great in this one, but it sounds like they're going to go to Russell Wilson, which is questionable considering this team is 4-2 and the 5 seed in the AFC currently. But defensively, this team continues to be great. That's going to be their identity of winning football games this season. If they can get a shutdown of a team's offense, they're going to win no matter what the Steelers' offense does. And they have the Jets coming up on Sunday, Devontae Adams' debut, and this is a chance for the Steelers to get another big win to their resume, get to 5-2. But right now, number 13 on this week's power rankings. I dropped the Eagles one for winning this week because the Eagles are starting to scare me a bit because they're not looking like the team they should be. This team is stacked. Talent-wise, one of the best teams in the NFL, but I don't know if it's coaching. Nick Sirianni seems like he might be on the hot seat, but this team just played the worst starting quarterback in the NFL and only won by 4. And that's concerning. They're 3-2, not in a playoff spot currently in the NFC. Eagles need to turn it around, and that starts in the upcoming weeks. So they're 3-2 right now, and I have them at 12. The Niners have finally won a divisional game. They beat the Seahawks. I moved them up 2-11, and they're leading the NFC West right now. There's not much competition in that division, it seems like, this season. So if the Niners have a down year, I think they're still going to make the playoffs. But Jordan Mason, he suffered an injury in this one, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the backfield, considering they're already dealing with the McCaffrey injury. And I think once the Niners get McCaffrey back, if he does come back in November, then it's going to be looking a lot brighter for them. But right now, they're 3-3, doing what they need to lead the division, and they're at 11. Into the top 10 now, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who offensively put on a show in this one. Sean Tucker had a big game out of the backfield, having over 130 yards rushing and scoring a touchdown. Receivers played extremely well, and when you score 51 in the game, that just knows that your offense is doing the right thing for pretty much the entire game. Defensively, allowing 27 is not great to a Saints team that started a quarterback in his first career start, but I'm not concerned about them because this game was a 24-point win. It was a blowout. And the Buccaneers played really well. Early, it was close, but in the second half, they broke away. Good job by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they are at number 10. Commanders' 4-game winning streak is over. They dropped the game to the Baltimore Ravens, and it was a good game. Two good football teams played, and one had to come out on top, and that happens to be the Ravens, who are coming up in this rankings. The Commanders, they are a great team. Jaden Daniels really is the guy of the future. There is something to believe again in Washington, which is something that team has not seen in a long time. Defensively, they lost Jonathan Allen for the year with a torn pec, but I don't think that's going to concern me because this defense is a good unit. Dan Quinn is a defensive genius, and he's their head coach. So I'm not scared of their defense. And this Commanders team playing well. They do take it out this week, but they have the Panthers on the schedule, so they should be 5-2. They're at number 9. Another NFC 4-2 team here as I keep the Falcons at 8. They beat the Panthers, where the offense just showed up once again. And the Falcons have really turned it around. Early on, I was a bit concerned about their team in general, but now they're 4-2, and I think they're going to get to the playoffs. It's going to be interesting between them and the Buccaneers who wins the NFC South. Right now, I'm leaning the Falcons just because they won that game on Thursday night in Week 5. But Buccaneers Falcons, it's going to be a really interesting NFC South race. But as for the Falcons, looking great, destroy the Panthers this week, and they stay at 8. The Buffalo Bills have just traded for Amari Cooper, and as for last night, big win. That's a game that the Bills, in years past, I don't know if they win. I don't know if the Buffalo Bills win that game in other years. This team, they lacked a wide receiver one. They just got one. And defensively, they've looked sound in some games. But I'm confident in that unit to come up big when they need to. And the Bills are really a big contender in the AFC. It seems like they're going to run away with the AFC East again. And that's going to be utterly important for when playoffs come around and seeding, this Bills team has the second easiest schedule in the league. They are going to have a great season, and I have them at 7. The Green Bay Packers had an incredible game against the Arizona Cardinals where Jordan Love looked amazing. Romeo Doubs comes back to the lineup. He scores 2 touchdowns. And it's just contribution from a huge cast of players for that Packers offense. That is their key to success. Defensively, this team played great again. McKinney's interception streak is over, but still, he's one of the highest guarded safeties by PFF. The one who's higher, Evan Williams, he's a Packer too. So the Packers looking great, number 6. The Houston Texans get it done. They improved to 5-1, which is great start. One of the best teams in the league record-wise. And the Houston Texans have only slipped up once. And that is key for what this Texans team wants to do. They've lost Nico Collins, but that seemed like it didn't really affect them at all because they have Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs, who are really good. Defensively, this team continues to play well, and this Texans team is going to get one of their biggest tests of the season when they go to Lambeau to take on the Packers this week in a game that I am going to be really excited to watch because those are 2 really, really good young football teams that I expect it to be a shootout. But for the Texans, they're at number 5 still. The Ravens win the Battle of Maryland as they beat the Washington Commanders. And Baltimore, 4-game win streak, best rushing attack in the league. They average over 200 yards a game, which is crazy. And defensively, they are great. Offensively, that rushing attack is amazing. The receivers are playing great. Baltimore just seems like they are the team they were last year. And Baltimore was the best regular season team last year. So lots to look up about in Baltimore. I have them at number 4 in this week's rankings. The Lions would be number 1 if the 2 teams above them were not undefeated because no team I've ever seen dominate a team like the Lions did the Cowboys this week. They had complete control the entire time. It was never close. The Lions were fooling around at the end of the game. And the Detroit Lions are playing amazing football right now. The one con to this week, Aiden Hutchinson out for the year. I hope he's okay. I hope he can make his return to football because he's a great player. But what a horrific injury. But back to the Lions playing great. Jared Goff is amazing. And defensively, this team knows what it's doing. It's a very good unit. And Detroit, number 3, and looking like a serious contender this season. The Minnesota Vikings were not in action this week, but they are 5-0, and their biggest test of the season is this Sunday against the Lions. If the Vikings beat the Detroit Lions this week, the Minnesota Vikings will likely be number 1 in these rankings next week because the Vikings have proven that they're a great football team, but they need that one key win on their resume, and they have the opportunity this Sunday. So Minnesota, they're on their bye week, but I'm still liking what they're doing right now, 5-0, number 2. So the Kansas City Chiefs stay at number 1 this week with a bye week, but they're 5-0, defending Super Bowl champions, and once again, another big test for a team that is undefeated. They play the 49ers this week in a Super Bowl rematch. That both teams are not looking their strongest right now, but Kansas City, they need to get that dominant win over a good team to make everybody believe that this Kansas City team is good again. And I have them at 1, but I believe in what Kansas City's doing. But that's going to do it for this week's Power Rankings. Make sure to like, share with your friends, and I will see you guys next week for the Power Rankings after Week 7.